What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. The patch 6.8 notes are finally out and it's shaping up to be a pretty nice patch with a lot of really nice changes. And amongst all the direct buffs and nerfs to champions and other things that take place on any given patch, there's always some hidden or indirect buffs that occur as a result. And they can have some minor effects on the meta, but sometimes every once in a while have a massive impact and lead to some flavor of the month champions rising up. So join me today in taking a look at the hidden buffs of patch 6.8. As well, I've partnered up with ProGuides.com for the editing on this video. They recently released a new service that allows you to ask questions to higher ranked players and get a reply within under a single minute. And they have a free trial that does give you full access, so you don't have to take from me, you can decide for yourself if you like it or not. Anyways, let's get started. Our first hidden buff of patch 6.8 is to bruiser and damage focused top laners. It's no secret that a large majority of the direct nerfs on this patch are targeting the top lane tank meta. With this patch, we're likely to see the tank meta in top lane decline by quite a bit actually. Nerfs to Iceborne Gauntlet affect most of the characters who aren't supposed to be tanks, but are building as a tank anyway because they can, and it's probably going to stop most champions from randomly being able to be tanks and still do a bunch of damage even when it makes no sense. I'm looking at you, Fizz. On top of that, with the nerf to Grasp of the Undying, hopefully we'll now see the death of champions who really should never have been building tanks in the first place, and were on a ridiculous power level as a result of it. The tank items should be reserved for the tank champions, and that's what this patch is shaping up to make happen. As well, we do have the direct nerfs to Echo and Graves on this patch, two really strong top laners who dominated the top lane tank meta quite heavily. And as a result of all of those things that I just listed, we have bruiser and damage focused top laners benefiting quite heavily as a result of those changes. When playing a bruiser or damage focused top laner now, you're more likely to get better matchups in lane, since those raid boss tanks that still dealt tons of damage while being tanky like Echo and Graves and a few others were nightmares to face if you weren't mega tanky yourself. And with the nerfs, the popularity of those champions takes a hit, and even when you are facing them, the matchups will be a little bit easier overall. The next group of champions we have receiving an indirect buff is pretty similar to the last one, and it's the RUNIC Echoes focused junglers, and I guess the warrior junglers as well, albeit definitely not as much. For a similar reason to the top lane changes, the tank junglers are taking some hits as a result of the nerfs to Iceborne Gauntlet, and as well you have the nerfs to Graves, Echo, and Master Yi. Graves and Master Yi were extremely powerful junglers for solo queue who honestly kind of dominated the meta, and gave AP junglers quite a hard time because they were strong and mobile enough with enough damage to have kill potential on the AP junglers, but they were tanky enough to survive the burst-oriented style of an AP champion. And as a result were tough matchups for AP junglers, and to some extent warrior junglers too, but only in certain cases. It's definitely going to influence the AP junglers a lot more. I'm not sure how often junglers were building Iceborne Gauntlet, but there were a few here and there that are likely to take hits and boost up the other junglers as well, similar to the other nerfs. And our next group of champions that we have that is taking an indirect buff is going to be to aggressive laners. This is an interesting one, as to go along with the nerfs to tanks, this entire playstyle of passive laning overall is taking a significant hit. Sustain that comes from areas in the game other than on a direct champion's kit is getting a pretty big nerf. Most tanks succeeded in the passive playstyle despite a weak early game without even having sustain in their kit, because the amount of sustain that is obtainable without actually having to directly have it on your champion was ridiculously high. And now that it's taking a step down, the laners who look to capitalize on aggression, so, strong lane bullies, burst damage champions, really just anyone good in the earlier mid game, is getting a little bit of a step up. And this happens as a result of the nerfs to the Feast Mastery, the nerf to the Biscuit Mastery, the nerf to Corrupting Potion, and lastly the nerf to Grasp of the Undying. When you put all four of those things together, that's a lot less sustain that's going to be going around the game, and it affects sustain less champions and weak early game champions the most. It also serves as a way to tone down tanks once again, so this aspect does kind of add into the changes to the top laners and the junglers that I mentioned previously. The next group of champions receiving an indirect buff is anyone who gets countered by cleanse effects. So think champions that AD carries would often just build it because they could, and there wasn't any meaningful trade-offs to make in damage in exchange for the utility that the cleanse option provided. However, with the nerf to the item, now you're going to start seeing it built a lot less now. You won't have to face that core counter mechanic as often for sure. The new Mercurial Scimitar is still decent for sure, but the gold efficiency especially took a solid hit, and if you play any of those champions that do have a hard time doing anything versus an opponent who have a cleanse effect, it's a nice step up. And next up we have the indirect buff to attack damage mid laners. Looks like Zed gets a bit of a double up on this one, as with the Galio buff, actually the attack damage mid laners are getting a nice step up. Galio's a pretty cool champion that revolves a lot around building magic resistance, which happens to be pretty dang useless against any mid laner revolving around attack damage. Although it is unclear how relevant of an option Galio will be now with this buff, myself and many other content creators thought that Galio was already a pretty underrated pick even before this buff. So now the buff shines a little bit of a light on Galio that could potentially spark a big boost in popularity once people realize that he's a bit stronger. And attack damage mid laners do great against Galio since they force him into a suboptimal build path. As well, on top of the Galio nerf, these laners actually benefit a bit too from all of the tank and sustain nerfs actually. Attack damage mid laners were suffering a bit versus tanks who were just too dang tanky for them to be able to do anything about them in teamfights. Whereas normally as an attack damage mid laner, they should be able to pump out some DPS that helps kill tanks due to the sustained damage they have from their auto attacks. So now these AD mid laners can also make a little bit more of an impact in teamfights versus tanks as well. Now that we've covered those, let's take a look at some of the highs and lows of patch 6.8. First off, we have the release of the Targ rework coming on this patch. It's actually a really cool rework that, when I played it on the PBE, felt pretty dang strong since he has a lot of utility and some really cool and interesting mechanics. So maybe take a look at him and try him out yourself, or at the very least get ready to play against him by learning what his new abilities are. As well, the buffs on this patch were all really nice boosts to those champions, but the biggest winner of this patch is definitely Rumble. Although increased damage to minions might not seem like that much, this is just the kind of utility that can actually have a huge effect on something. And we've seen it time and time again with things like Sunfire Cape in the past, how more damage to minions actually goes a long way. So maybe try out Rumble once again and dust him off out from the closet for the new and improved top laner. And not to mention, he does also benefit quite a bit from the indirect changes on this patch. As well, for the biggest loser of this patch, it definitely has to be Tank Echo. The nerfs to Tank Echo on this patch were monstrous, but they came with the trade-off of a nice little buff to AP Echo actually, so he could be a cool option if you were maybe playing Tank Echo before, or if you want to try out a new AP Assassin. So maybe try out AP Echo in the mid lane or something if you're interested in playing a champion like him. And on top of that, there's some quality of life changes to champion select, some bug fixes, and a couple of tweaks with the settings, and as always, I'll link the full patch notes in the description if you happen to be interested in seeing the full detailed notes. Either way, patch 6.8 is definitely shaping up to be an awesome patch, and I'm super excited for it. And that just about wraps it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you didn't, hit that dislike. Subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.